So, about an hour into recording this episode, there were some technical difficulties, and we thought we lost the audio, but then we didn't. So, this podcast is kind of split in between two separate podcasts that we thought would be one. So, this is part one.
Hi, Richie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone. So this is actually...
Hello?
No, not yet. Not yet.
I'm everyone.
This was supposed to be a surprise. Because this is the first episode of 2020. Yay.
What?
Oh my god.
You just said we were recording with Saint. You didn't say it was the first episode of 2020.
I decided like 30 minutes ago because I still have episodes to edit from the past like 2 months, but they're gonna be in 2020, and I feel like at least one episode should be like, oh, look at this. This is the first episode of 2020. What a glorious occasion, huh? Even though it's actually still 2019 for us.
Okay.
It was supposed to be like an illusion, Richie, but you ruined it.
Okay. Sorry. So, Saint, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Saint.
So, Saint, tell us about your content and what you do.
I mainly stream on Twitch, usually, like I do like invasions in Dark Souls, like 1 through 3, and Bloodborne on the weekends. Everyone who knows me probably knows me for that reason. And then during the week, I just play like old video games or whatever kind of pops up. And then on YouTube, I just make crazy people videos about Dark Souls player versus player. I stamp my feet and scream and wait for Elden Ring news to happen.
Where could people find you on YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that, Saint?
On YouTube, it is Saint_Riot. On Twitch, it's just one word, Saint Riot. And if you want me on Twitter, you have to put in like all the underscores because it's like _Saint_Riot_. Yep, that's it.
Is it because XXX Saint XXX Riot XXX was taken?
I wish I'd thought of that. I went for Saint_Riot 420, and that was gone. So,
Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And today we're going to talk about some Soulsborne stuff. Yay!
Yay!
Hooray.
And I asked on Discord, and people had some questions about Dark Souls. And we have them here in front of us. The first question is by Che Pablo. It says, I have many questions, of course. Okay, thank you, Che Pablo. I'll be honest. I just copy-pasted these. Usually I go through them and sort them in like a way that makes sense. This was just a copy-paste of everything. Because I'm on vacation. And I'm just like napping and drinking.
Yeah, it's automatically formatted this, so they're all different headings. When I saw that this thing has all these different sections, I thought, God, how long is this? And I realized now each of those is like one line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Vlad Lad says, for real, I always wanted to hear Saint talk at length about his ideas. Okay, Saint, talk at length about your ideas. Go.
What are your ideas?
All right, so what if we could wear socks on our hands and we could wear gloves on, like those kind of ideas? Or do you want just Dark Souls ideas? You probably just went, okay, Dark Souls ideas, right?
We can do both.
Vlad didn't specify.
I live in the United States, and this is what you get, Vlad. You're going to hear about my sock hand. No. I live in the United States, and I live in the southern United States, which puts me firmly in a camp of people who do Dark Souls on YouTube, and so like I have to be obsessed with Velka. Like those are the rules. I didn't make them up. I just have to go
Yep.
by them, right? So
Yeah.
where I differ with everybody else who says y'all and also cares about Velka is everyone is always really like, oh, where did Velka go? What is Velka? Where did Velka go? Where did Velka go? And I love the idea of Velka, but I see her as this, like, she's done. Her storyline concluded at the end of Dark Souls 1. She's the goddess of sin
Right.
and judgment and meting out punishment. And so I see this, the gods and their lackeys have cooked up this oh, what if we tell them that they should totally light themselves on fire? We don't really tell them that. We just still light themselves on fire. We'll tell them it's awesome. And if you do it, then you're the best guy. So then that actually happens. But I've always assumed that when the bird picks you up at the undead asylum, like that's sort of Velka. Like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna see this. We're gonna actually do this prophecy. We're gonna do this prophecy, and you're gonna do it. And in the process of doing that, you're gonna kill all these dudes who basically conspired against humans. And the whole Dark Souls thing to me is just one big conspiracy against humans, and I love that kind of. Oh, I could talk about it forever.
Aw.
Well, we'll get comfy.
But yeah, so I love Velka. I love Velka not being around. I'm all about it's one of those. I feel like it was such a good story point that I didn't want to see it brought back up. I never wanted to meet Velka,
My muse has a question for you.
Is your muse the liquor? Or is it?
You haven't seen my muse, have you? Okay, I'm going to show you my muse.
I've not seen your muse.
What's the problem, Richie?
Go on.
No, tell us,
Well,
Richie.
no, let's all see your muse.
Okay.
I believe the liquor is your muse, but you choose to let it take the form of a small sort of fairy cat.
So I posted the muse in Discord, Saint.
Oh, it's adorable.
Thank you, Anze. Anze made it. Yay.
It's got sushi floating around it.
Yeah.
What is it drinking? It's got an umbrella in it.
What indeed?
What is it drinking, Richie?
It's drinking a Japanese slipper, which is the cocktail that Sin makes while we're recording. And I do mean while, not before.
So it's totally liquor then.
Yeah. And what kind of mug is the muse holding, Richie?
Is it the Abruitus mug?
It's the Brutus mug. Isn't it beautiful?
Good. It's incredible to think that 2 years ago we hadn't even talked properly, and now it's this.
Does Saint know Brutus?
I
think we'll just stick to the questions.
Now, hang on.
Okay. All right.
I do know Abruitus, and I have absolute as the creator of a stupid voice that people just enjoy way more than you ever intended. I feel absolute solidarity with you on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am well aware. And just stay strong.
You know what? I think I can die happy. People know Brutus. I did everything I needed to do on this earth. You can't go any higher than this. Okay. Thank you, Saint. Oh yeah, so my muse had a question.
What is the question?
Well, when your muse comes to and it tells you a question in the moment, you're like, but then you're like, oh, that's going to be really stupid.
I know exactly what that's like.
Do you think Velka is into vor?
Sin discovered vor very recently. And she's just like this wide-eyed child who's just imagining all the things that can be Vor now.
Yeah, because V starts with 4 and Velka starts with 4.
That's true. That's true.
That's undeniable. I would go so far as to say it's 100% fact. So I don't know a lot about the cut content of the Souls games, but I know that that's a big part. Whenever you guys talk about it and on your podcast or like watching Lance and his YouTube and stuff like that, whenever I hear the cut content, I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but I don't know much about it. But I do know that originally Gwendolyn was supposed to have some sort of like connection with Velka in some way. And in Dark Souls 3, Gwendolyn is vored by Aldrich. And so there you have it. Yes. Yes.
Oh my god.
It's canon now.
Yes! Wow! I've never been more happy. This is the best podcast of 2020, y'all. Thank you, Saint.
You are more than welcome.
Also, by the way, there's a little lag between when we talk. That's why sometimes it seems like I'm talking over you when I'm actually not.
Yeah.
Like as when you play, when you're doing Dark Souls PvP and you're playing against someone who lives far away from you, there's like more latency. It's kind of like I'm adjusting to the latency. You guys are hitting me with like some phantom range on your straight swords, which is total bullshit, but it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I'll adjust.
Thank you, Saint. Excellent. Okay, so back to the topic. Saint, do you have anything else you'd like to say about Velka or any revelations you may have had that you'd like to share with us?
I'm kind of like looking through the questions that we have, and there are like I'm gonna loop back around to Velka on pretty much every one of these questions, even questions like why JSF doesn't like Yorshka. The reason he doesn't like Yorshka is really Velka, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that. That's coming. Don't you worry.
All right. Okay, cool.
Excellent. So then we can go on to the next question by Che Pablo. And Che Pablo asks, who was Gwen? We know who he was, of course, but what kind of person was he? I think the Ringed City reveals a lot of clues, but how are they connected?
Gwen always gets like the brunt of the geez, what a jerk that guy was. Because he defied nature and kind of set the whole thing in motion. But I think the Ringed City kind of I think all of the game has attempted to like spread that blame out amongst all of the gods. But Gwen, for whatever reason, has always sort of taken the brunt of it with the players, the fans. And I think the Ringed City kind of went out of their way, like they put the dark sign on the Ringed Knights, and sort of like who had to have done that? Who had to have done that? Like the Witch of Islip had to have done that, right? And it sort of paints Gwyn in a more like, yeah, he feared humans, and he obviously wasn't like a good guy, but it wasn't like he ran away from them. Obviously, they played some part in, but that's we kind of got a feel for that in Dark Souls 1 with Ulasil. That was obviously like a human place, and New Londo was a human place, and Gwyn seemed okay with that. And we get you get the statue at the end of the Ringed City with the Chloranthy ring sort of representing Filianor, and Gwyn just sort of pawning off his kids and being like, well, you guys don't ever leave here. Don't ever leave here. And just, my sleepy daughter will make your little land here. It'll always be vibrant and growing and good. And, so like, yeah, he's a total jerk, but, he was at least,
Yeah.
he wasn't like stomping on pygmies underfoot and like throwing them in fires or anything.
Yeah, he was trying to like keep everything so basically defending the status quo.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Is what he was doing. Yeah.
What would have happened if he threw them in the fire?
What, the pygmies?
Yeah.
I kind of think humans had something to do with the Witch of Izalith, like trying to start her own fire. Like one of the
Right.
things that they talk about, like it's the witches aren't casting pyromancy, like they're using fire magic, which is something that humans can't do. We just can't. But the witches gave
Yeah.
the humans pyromancy as a sort of, but it's inherently tied to humanity, uh, and that creates chaos. So the idea that there's this bed of chaos, like, and it's, I mean, I don't know, but to me, it's just always seemed like somewhere down the line there had to have been like some kind of human element to that. If chaos is a sort of culmination of fire plus humanity equals chaos.
Yeah, and they taught the humans pyromancy, and there's that special flame in 2 that like scales with hollowing. Presumably that wouldn't work on anyone that isn't human, because only humans can hollow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The Peasant Corn asks, within the ringed city is a swamp with the Dragon Slayer armor. It's like BB with stacked realms, or is it just from software recycling material?
BB.
BB.
So the question I take it, the question I take it is the Dragon Slayer armor in the swamp because, like Bloodborne has stacked realms, is the Ringed City stacked realms? Which I think no. I think we see like the world literally collapsing in on itself. Is the first thing we see in the Dreg Heap, and I guess we saw it before that when we fought the Soul of Cinder. The whole world is like collapsed in on itself, and like a hole has opened up, almost like the world is hollowing, and everything's just falling into this hole. And it doesn't have to make sense to us like spatially, because it's Dark Souls and the whole earth can move and yada. So but I think just the Dragon Slayer armor fell in from Lothric. And remember, the first thing in the Dreg Heap that we see is Lothric. So the Dragon Slayer armor just fell into the hole, landed in the swamp. I guess it's like a weird humanity swamp, and that has sort of resurrected the armor, similarly to how the Pilgrim Butterfly controlled it when we fought it the first time.
Yeah.
And I for whatever reason, I guess the Dragon Slayer armor is just like humanity can just hop in and ride it. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's never made clear like if the Dragon Slayer armor is just a suit of armor, or if it's some sort of like golem thing that's being controlled. Like if it's meant to be an animated sort of statue in the first place, or if it coming to life is just something the butterflies did.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
when you first, the first time I played through the game, it's armor, and you get the soul of the armor, and it says it was reanimated, and you say, okay, so maybe this was like, maybe this was Osiris's like dragon slaying armor, or maybe this was the nameless
Yeah.
king's dragon
Yeah.
slaying armor. But every time we meet the thing, it's possessed by darkness or humanity, So I like maybe it was just always a
Yeah.
golem, that just did it.
Yeah. Because like the first time I saw it, because you see like it's on the bridge and then the butterfly is on it and then it sort of rises up, and I thought, oh, that's the guy who was in the armor, and they turned into that butterfly, and now they're still controlling the armor. But then it's also written as though it could be some sort of like a golem or something that's controlled, that's always meant to be controlled by an outside force.
Because Dark Souls ?
Yeah. So I guess like to add to the whole stacked realms thing, this is something that like we sort of touched on before when you said that like the first thing you see in the Dreg Heap is bits and pieces of Lothric. And like it's very explicitly like bits and pieces of Lothric. You see Lothric Knights, you see the Lothric banner, you see like the passive man that's petrified. But then when you're fighting Gale, in the background of his arena, you can see a completely intact Lothric castle on the horizon. So I think you just have to assume that, like, time and space are collapsing as you're going through that area, because those two things can't both exist at once.
The Ring City's a weird one, because the moment, I think Lap is the first one that says it, but he says at the end of the world. And so, like, the first time I heard that, I was like, okay, I will almost, because the whole Dark Souls 3 premise is, like, literally these places are moving around on the map to get closer to each other so that somebody will link this fire. So when I heard someone say at the end of the world, my mind immediately went, okay, then it is both, like, physically and metaphysically at the end of the world. It only exists at the end of the world insofar as, like, time goes, but also, like, if Dark Souls was like, if it was on, like, a flat Earth, the Ringed City is, like, at the end of flat Earth. But none of that has to, because none of it can be where it's all at. Like, you know, we know that that's not how that, like, that's not how it played out. Like, Lothric is not, when you're playing Dark Souls 3, you're not on top of the Dark Souls 2 area. What's it called? With the windmills.
Drangleic.
Yes,
Earthen
right.
Peak.
So it's like, we know Lothric's
Yeah.
not on top of the Earthen Peak, and we know the Earthen Peak wasn't on top of Firelink Shrine. And we know that if you took the hole in Firelink Shrine, you didn't go to the Ringed City. But none of this has to make sense, because conveniently, and I guess wisely, the first thing they did when they started crafting this final version of the game was say, these places can just move, and you just have to just accept that. Okay, fine, they can move.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'm very excited for these next questions.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, Che Pablo asks, what is Filianor doing exactly?
She's sleeping.
Yeah. Like, I assume the question is like she's obviously some sort of, like, spell or gatekeeping, like, mechanism. She's sleeping, but I, like, beyond, like, is she stopping us from seeing things as they really are, or is she holding, like, time together in place? And the answer to that question is, I have no idea what she's doing.
I think it's probably similar to what happens in Anor Londo and Dark Souls 1, where there's, like, there are things there that are clearly physical and are really there and you're fighting them, but then when you dispel Gwendolyn's illusion, they disappear. So it's not like they were always there. They were real things, but they were sustained by Gwendolyn.
Mm.
So I'm guessing it's just the same thing, where it's just that on a massive scale, where, like, the whole of the city is sustained by Filianor.
What drives me crazy, like, we can kill Gwendolyn and nothing changes. But when we destroy the illusion of Guinevere, we see Anor Londo for what it really is. So,
Yeah.
like, who's which part of that is, like, is feeling like she can't be constructed by anything, you know what I mean? She can't be an illusion like Guinevere is. But
She's a real, she leaves a corpse,
yeah. But oh, I guess it's the egg. The answer is the egg. That's the answer to Che Pablo's question. What exactly is Filianor doing? She is hanging out with Egg, and Egg is life. Egg is love.
Aw. Okay, but what if the egg was actually filled with a Japanese slipper and she drank it all and fell asleep?
Yeah. She's just hungover.
Yeah.
This is a cautionary tale for you, Sin.
Oh my god!
That you can't let your life pass you by. Drunk,
Yeah.
drunk on that Japanese liquor.
Oh wow! Actually, yeah.
And then when you wake her up, she's like, "Oh god, what? Yeah!" And everything just ends.
I've also heard theories that once you wake her up, you're actually transported into the future.
Well, yeah, because it's possible that, like, the other explanation is that, like, rather than it being an illusion specifically, it's that she's somehow holding back time. Like, her sleeping, her not being awake is like holding everything in the present forever, because, like, she's asleep.
Mhm.
And then when she wakes up, suddenly everything... I think we talked about this another time, about that, the Taro the fisherman story. About the fisherman... It's like a Japanese folktale about a fisherman, and he's taken to the palace of the king of the sea under the sea, and he lives there for a very long time. And then when he goes back to the shore, the time he spent there, like, passed much, much faster. So it's like decades and decades and decades later when he gets back to the shore, and then when it's like Rip Van Winkle, and then he realizes how long it's been, and he sort of ages to dust. It made me think a bit of that.
Mm.
One of the Ulasil sorceries says that light is time. I read that and I was like, okay, wait, that's actually kind of neat. If when I kill a boss, I can't be invaded anymore, and I also can't co-op. Like, I can't pull you into my world. I can't pull your ghost into my world anymore. It's because I've sort of, like, cemented some sort of, like, present on an ever-shifting, like, Ouija board world where Dark Souls happens, and, like, all these ghosts can constantly come in and harass you or help you. But when you kill the boss turns into a bonfire. The bonfire puts off light, and the light is okay. You've anchored your world to this light. And I was always, so playing through Dark Souls 3, I read that item description. It made me think about all the other Dark Souls, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. And then you get to Felianor, and, like, okay. Like, there's no like source of light. There's no, she's light. I mean, there's a bonfire right there, but, like, she's a corpse before you light that bonfire, and she wasn't a corpse just a moment ago, and you touched the egg and the whole thing. So I don't, it's drift me. I don't know. It's crazy.
She'd technically be like the Princess of Sunlight, though, because she's Gwyn's daughter.
That is true. That is,
yeah.
Yeah. So she's, like, her entire being is basically just a being of light. So, okay, you fixed me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't mention it. I love Gwyn's family so much.
Awesome. We're getting somewhere.
Oh, this next question is so good.
Yeah. Are we ready for the next question?
Okay. Yeah.
I was born ready for.
Just get it over with.
Oh my god, before we go on to the next question, Saint, have you seen the episodes where we did an interview with the Soul of Cinder as well as Gale?
I did not.
Yeah, we got him on. I'll send you the link afterwards. So I was just thinking maybe we should have Yorshka on as well.
No.
No.
She's in high demand. And I hear she's a bit of a diva.
Mariah Yorshka. Okay, so the next question is again by Che Pablo. Why doesn't Richie like Yorshka?
Well, it's not that I dislike Yorshka as an individual. It's that Yorshka as a character, as a way she fits into the world, makes virtually no sense at all, but people keep asking me to explain it. And this has metastasized into a very real loathing of the character. And which has been made worse over time as I have been hanging around the data mining community and found other versions of Yorshka that existed in other areas, and it just, like, cements that basically they had this character model and they didn't know what to do with her, so they just kept putting her in different places and coming up with different stories for her. I guess, like, I don't know. Just quickly, like, having looked into it, I get the impression that in one of the, like, earlier drafts of the story, Yorshka was, like, very, very important. She, like, would not have been called Yorshka, probably wasn't supposed to be Gwyn's kid, but I get the feeling that, like, you know, in Sekiro, the stuff about, like, the divine children where they're, like, kidnapping Kuro and then they're trying to, like, make their own divine heir by putting water in children and stuff. I think that might actually have been close to what Dark Souls 3 initially was about, because we'll just keep going, whatever. Like, so, like, it looks like the early sort of Dark Souls 3 stuff was very much about, like, finding or creating a dragon baby. And Yorshka looks like a dragon child lady girl.
Also, I do know this, the cut content where she was in Irithyll Dungeon, and Irithyll Dungeon is full of those not quite dragon people. Yeah.
I'll lay out the current unified theory of Yorshka. Okay, so, like, I don't know if you know this, I know Sin knows it, but, like, you know in Bloodborne when they flash back to Byrgenwerth from the Grand Cathedral?
Yes.
Yeah. That's done by there's just a little tiny copy of Byrgenwerth outside the map that they just move the camera to. It doesn't actually load the Byrgenwerth map, which obviously it does to prevent itself from having to look, because otherwise there'd be a loading screen, basically. So basically there's a little tiny chunk of Byrgenwerth just floating outside the Grand Cathedral that the camera moves to. So some data miners that I was talking to, they found a very similar thing in the Road of Sacrifices in Dark Souls 3, where there is just a little room that's floating outside the map, and it looks kind of like it might be the Cathedral of the Deep. And it's Yorshka and an evangelist, and they're, like, posed facing each other. And then in the Cathedral of the Deep, when Lance was playing around with the data mine there, he found out that there's a bunch of, like, instances of Yorshka in that building. If he activated them all at once, so it looked like there were a ton of Yorshkas, but it's probably more likely that one would be on at a time as she moved around. And then, so we have that. So we also have the Oseros Ocelot, like, shouting about his baby thing. That has always been there, even before Oseros was meant to be the king of Lothric. He was just something called the Dragon Angel, but he still had the baby, and he would still have the lines about, like, I will not give him up. And then you also had the dragon babies in Irithyll Dungeon. And, like, Yorshka, if you look at her, she's very draconic. She's got the tail, she's got the scales, and she kind of has horns. And it looks a lot like, just from piecing that together, that, like, they somehow kidnapped Yorshka and took her to the cathedral, and, like, she was then going to be kidnapped again to be taken to Irithyll Dungeon. Kind of like Kuro in Sekiro, that, like, you were maybe trying to trail her. And then you have all these people, like, creating or obsessively protecting dragon children. So it looks like she's maybe just a leftover from some weird early story about, like, you know, like the Sekiro stuff about the children with the heritage of the dragon, that, like, maybe that actually started off as a Dark Souls 3 thing and kind of got recycled. I don't know. But yeah, it looks like there were definitely cutscenes of Yorshka. Probably before she was Yorshka. She's actually called Saint internally.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, cool.
Like, I have never had an issue with Yorshka in Dark Souls 3, and I think that, like, as you guys who go into this like, cut content, like, you sort of, you see all these, like, worlds that could have been and stories that could have been. It would absolutely drive me mad trying to like, complete a circle that. So I've never had that. So to me, I see Yorshka and she's like, yeah, I'm Gwyn's kid, and I was like, well, it's okay. Yeah. I will 100%. I'll buy this as soon as you're selling it to me. Like, Gwendolyn had snakes for legs, and you have scales And maybe Priscilla was. I know that was a theory that Priscilla was Gwen's kid and was locked away in the painted world. So if Sullivan, I love Pontiff Sullivan. I love this guy. He's one of my favorite like Dark Souls characters. So his if his whole thing is like, I hate the gods, Gwen's family, like those are he hates them, just can't stand them. But for some reason he feels some sort of kinship with Yorshka, and Yorshka has, a very Priscilla-esque aura about her with the tail and I'm very soft-spoken and just, I don't, like everything's nice here. It's nice. But at some point, obviously Gwendolyn, Yorshka sort of represented something very similar to Filianor. Yorshka's spear, the weapon, and I think the spear even says something about like, hey, this...
Yeah, about sleeping.
Yeah, this will put you to sleep.
Yeah.
So, Yorshka to me was always just sort of like, oh yeah, I guess Sullivan, either he was cool enough with her to like not despise her, or he, he's got something else planned that he'll do later, and he's just keeping her in the tower for the time being. But even the fact that she's up there in the tower, and the tower takes you, like we know where that tower would take you in Dark Souls 1. It would take you to the painting. And if you take the tower down in Dark Souls 3, that tower shows you, you find the painting guardians stuff there. So for me, Yorshka was always just sort of like, oh, okay. But like listening to your guys' podcast, and I take a weird, perverse pleasure from how much you get tired of talking about Yorshka.
Okay, that was part 1 of the podcast we thought we'd lost but hadn't, so here is part 2. Okay.
And I'm going to press record here and save. All right, let's do this. Hi, Richie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone. What's happening today, Richie?
Well, this is the 3rd attempt at recording a discussion about Dark Souls with Saint Riot.
Woo!
Why not introduce yourself to us again?
Hello, I'm Saint Riot again.
Well, Saint, tell us about yourself.
I feel like we are so intimately connected on this 3rd round that I could just send the vibrations of my whole inner being. But basically, I do Dark Souls PvP, but I'm also I'm a self professed lore nerd as well. So I always try and I like to try and bridge those two very desperate nerd worlds together, because I feel like they could have some sort of weird Dark Souls community baby, maybe a dragon baby kind of thing. With I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Excellent. Thank you. And where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Saint_Riot, or at Twitch at just Saint Riot with just one word. And I'm also on Twitter. You can just look for Saint Riot, and I'm sure I should be one of the first 2 or 3 that pops up.
Thank you. And today we're going to talk about some Dark Souls. Woo!
Yay!
I could talk about this forever.
Well, it looks like you're going to have to, because the audio recording today is not very good, and we had to restart this a few times.
This is literally the best day of life, having to do this. I'm it's the best day of my life. I'm here for this.
So say that again.
The best day of my life. I'll say it 3 more times, and I'll mean it every one.
So we answered some of the questions that were posted on Discord, and if the previous audio can be salvaged, it may or may not find itself on Patreon, depending on how bad it is. But we're just going to continue with the questions. The next question is by Chez Pablo.
Okay.
Why doesn't Richie like Yorshka?
Well, this is a long story.
Oh, thank you, Richie.
That's all right.
Saint, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to, like, looking at the Discord messages that you copied and pasted them, I took this question from Che Pablo. Why does JSF dislike Yorshka? I took it as like he was asking me that question. Like I had the answer to why, and I don't. So I appreciate because that question goes deep, but I don't have your answer. I don't know. I do know because he just explained it. But
excellent.
I was saying to Richie, like I've never had an issue with Yorshka. I've like when she says, yeah, I'm Gwen's kid. Well, she doesn't say that, but she says Gwendolyn's my brother. So, by virtue of this, I am Gwen's kid. So I was like, okay, sure. Like Gwendolyn has snakes for legs. I will absolutely believe that you are also his kid. So, fine. Like in life, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And like she just kind of gets appointed to like some sort of like dark moon position of authority by virtue of the fact that her brother like runs this company. And like so after the events of Dark Souls 1, Gwendolyn, he takes on this more leadership focused role of Anor Londo and Irithyll. And so Yorshka just kind of lucks into like a nice office with a good view. That's
She got the corner office.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess you can look forward to more Yorshka content coming soon because they dug up some more fucking Yorshka, which we're gonna have to cover.
I think we're going to have Yorshka on the podcast to tell her side of the story.
What do you think the internet's like in Anor Londo? Because she'd have to do it from her tower.
Might encounter some difficulties.
That Yorshka cut content was like this cliche of a Freudian dream. Where we're just going through the files and suddenly there's just a gigantic Yorshka looming over me and it's like, no! No!
Thank you, Richard.
You asked what the internet is like in Anor Londo, and as someone who has spent a considerable amount of time invading in what we lovingly refer to as Gank City, I can tell you that it's trash. It is awful. It is bad. Like, they don't have casting animations for Chaos Bed Vestiges. It just comes out, and you just take damage. Sometimes it doesn't come out, and you just take damage.
That means we're going to have to take a road trip to the tower to visit her. Yay! Richie doesn't seem to be very excited about this.
She's going to have a really stupid question for you when you first get there. Are you a bird?
Oh, poor Yorshka.
It's like imagining the day they had to explain that the new head of the Dark Moon Knights is Yorshka. She's just staring off into the distance with like the Dark Moon staff like shoved up her nose. Going, are you a bird?
Yeah. Oh, hey, time out. We're on to something. Why do you think Cirrus left the Dark Moons?
Oh, she's just fed up.
She's done.
Yeah.
She was in line for a promotion.
Oh my god.
And then they just put Yorshka in there and she was like, "No, I'm going to go talk to my grandpa. This is ridiculous."
So, Richie, Yorshka is in your mind the equivalent of Ralph?
Yeah, Yorshka is the Ralph Wiggum of Dark Souls.
We kill Vaders.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that was an hour to get through that question.
Well, for people listening, that's only like 10 minutes. Actually, technically speaking, it's been 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah, but the gap in between starting and answering that question was about an hour. Yeah.
Real condensed loathing from Richie there.
Yeah.
Like if you were gonna make a soup out of that, you'd have to add water.
It'll be a pretty salty soup.
Dishwater soup.
You know about dishwater soup? Oh my god!
I know. Boom. Look at that. That is a
That
is a Snack Wraith lore callback.
Amazing.
Nailed it. Damn, I worked that in.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, and I asked Saint if he heard about Dignity City, and he hasn't heard about it yet. So I sent him Sketchy Boss Arenas. Yeah? Yeah, Richie, our best work? Yeah.
I listened to that podcast while I was like drinking my morning coffee, and now admittedly I had stuff I had to do around the house, so I didn't get to like listen to every minute of it, but I never heard the words Dignity City brought up.
Richie, do you want to explain briefly what Dignity City is?
Sin was trying to figure out what Bergenworth would mean in English, because apparently it's not just a name; it has to translate to something. And she realized that Berg meant a city, and worth was your sense of dignity. And then I was very tired at that point. I just snapped, what? So it's called Dignity City. And then about a week later, it was a t-shirt. This happens every time I say anything. So eventually I'm just going to be too frightened to talk.
But I think it's a little bit like karma, because when you say something, it's not always like, oh, good idea, Sin. It's like repeating back to me what I said and making me feel like, oh yeah, that's pretty stupid. So I'm pretty sure it's karma, Richie. Also saying, just so that you know, Dignity City has a signet. And I put it in Discord. So there's a Bruitus over there, and there's Horsefish. And they're in Dignity City University.
Horsefish. What is...
That was Sin forgot what a seahorse was. Called it a horsefish.
Horsefish, yes. Bruitus is most definitely one of the cutest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, and another reason I'm terrified of talking.
I mean, like, so I made a video while I was doing invasions. I had this idea in my head of like, I really like role-playing games, you know?
Yeah.
I had this idea for, well, if you had a dungeon master and he was narrating your invasions to you and he was just constantly belittling you and like making fun of you. So I did a video, I made up a little voice for the dungeon master, and now anytime I do anything, I am always berated with "do the dungeon master voice."
Yes.
Yes. So I absolutely feel solidarity there with Richie and Bruitus. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Richie doesn't have to do a Bruitus voice all the time. There's also the Pirate Richie. There's the Dalek Richie.
Yeah. Many of which I don't know exist until you just announce, do it as this.
Willem Beatbox Richie is a favorite.
Which is just actual Willem noises that you thought were me.
Yeah.
There's also the time we had Varty on and people thought it was me. Thus completely negating what we had to do.
Having Varty on your thing?
We had Varty on for like 40 seconds. But people just think it's me.
I've seen that Varty was on your was on your podcast. I haven't listened to it, but I saw the thumbnail. I was like, that's a big get,
Yeah.
you know? But it never occurred to me that he's also Australian. And I was actually just talking. They're like, this to me, there are the two types of Australians. There's the ones that are all very cheerful, and then there's like Richie. There's like, and you know, obviously no offense meant here, Richie, but like I've always called them like the Eeyore Australians.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's okay. But you know, if Vadi's not like bringing that Vadi thunder for a video, if he's just having a conversation, it might be difficult to discern, especially for us, you know, over here in the West, you know.
I will send you the link so you can appreciate it later.
Thank you, and I will.
Thank you. So I think we can move on to the next question. And again, it's Shea Pablo, and he's asking, what will happen if you don't wake up Filianor?
Nothing.
You wouldn't make She-Ra angry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that doesn't stop Gale from eating people.
Yeah.
Like you just wouldn't be aware that Gale is eating people.
It raises this other weird question, which is like, when we show up, like Filianor is there is no desert. We don't see the Pygmy Kings. But then when we do, Gale's already there, so is it like the worlds merging again? Like, did Gale already do this and now we're in Gale's world? Or are we moving forward to a point in time after Gale has done it? Or...
Well, okay. So Richie pointed out that Filianor is one of Gwen's kids. You know, she could be like the being of light that sort of like anchors the world together. So when she dies, maybe it unifies the world in darkness. And now, yeah, you've caught up with Gale, essentially. But Gale is obviously different. Like, he has changed from how we have seen him previously. Now he's like a big hulking.
Yeah.
Basically, he's kind of Smoish in his like, I eat people, now I'm big. Oh. But again, that whole DLC like is like, you know, it's the same place because the Ring Knight with the paired swords, he's in the same place. She-Ra, she's in the same place. So, like, yes, it is the future, but what does that doesn't necessarily mean anything to us as Dark Souls players, because time doesn't mean anything.
You can draw parallels with Dark Anor Londo, where like you can be in your Dark Anor Londo and then invade Light Anor Londo and be invaded by someone from a Light Anor Londo. They can like coexist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think the other thing is like, what happens if we don't wake Filianor? Is like Filianor's orb thing is like, it's visibly already rotting away. So presumably just with time, this would have happened anyway. We just accelerated it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when we first arrive at the Ringed City, when I first saw the very first pygmy that you meet in the Ringed City, he's kind of close to the bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
You can miss him, you know?
Yeah.
When you talk to him, he tells you, he's like, this is not real. This is not accurate at all. This is a sewer.
Yeah.
What you are looking at right now. And it's all because of her. If you go see her, you'll see that this isn't real. And then that guy leaps. The first time I saw that guy, I was like, I wonder if that's the furtive pygmy. I wonder if that's him, because he's hidden away. You talk to him, and then he disappears, and you never see him again. So obviously furtive, and he is a pygmy. So I was really curious, but I go back and I play Dark Souls 1, and I look at Manus, and I'm like, this has to be the furtive pygmy, right? This has to be the one. I'll go back and forth until I'm dead, I guess. I don't know.
Actually, Manus is Velka.
I really like Manus. I like him as a boss fight. I like him as a character.
Yeah.
I write, and as a writer, I love the idea that Manus is the furtive pygmy because it wraps everything up.
Yep.
But it's Dark Souls, so question mark. Maybe it's not. Maybe he's another, who knows? But Velka's the bird.
Yes.
Everybody knows Velka's the
Bird, bird. The bird's the word. I said a bird, bird.
Bird. Oh no, we'll get copyright claimed again.
Oh. Thank you. So the next question is, are the pygmies carbon-based or silicone-based?
I am not educated enough to offer any, like everything in our life is
Yes.
carbon based, right? But I don't know. I'm gonna go carbon based, but this is a guess, so I'll just guess carbon based.
I think we'll say carbon based as well, because that would probably help them burn better.
Lore.
Okay. Thank you. So we're gonna skip the next question about Yorshka and Priscilla because we talk about it in depth in the podcast that we did with Loki. So we can move on to other people as well who ask questions.
Okay.
Okay. So Bodgerman asks, as descended from the pygmies, how did humans spread over the rest of the world?
Oh, I think like there were already humans all over the world. It's just that like their ancestors got the dark soul and it spread among them. Because like the way it's explained by like Karth is that's the human strength was specifically that like there were lots of them, so the soul was divided among them instead of being held by one, and that's what made them such a threat, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't like, like you want to get rid of the light soul, you go and kill the Witch of Izalith because she's the one that has it, then she's gone. Whereas with the humans, the dark soul was spread among all of them. So instead of being able to pinpoint, okay, that one over there is the danger, just any of them could become like the inheritor of the dark soul at any point. That's why Gwen got so paranoid, because it was like this entire like species is a threat to me versus this one person is.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Saint?
I like that answer.
Yeah, me too.
Having played Dark Souls, like the first time you go into the chasm of the abyss and you see just like humanity like kind of just floating around, and it's obviously like it hurts you and it hits you like a video game enemy would, but I kind of took from that it was just attracted to you, it was just coming for you. And human bodies just sort of served as we're told that they serve as a vessel, but we also see that they can serve as a vessel for humanity. So again, I play Dark Souls 1 and I see, Gwen has a million Silver Knights, and I just assume in my mind, well, he just split up part of his soul and made all these Silver Knights. Okay, well, later on, that doesn't seem to make as much sense. But I just assumed maybe the furtive pygmy had done the same thing, just split it up and given it to a bunch of people. But I like the idea of a sort of like just a race of people that existed, and this fragment of Dark Soul, which I guess that's what each humanity represents, could just go to anybody. Anybody could have it. And if you pulled it all together, you would, like Keith says, you would have a Dark Lord.
You can see also, that like there's a female corpse model for Dark Souls. It's only used in a few very specific circumstances, but one of them, it's got a twin humanity on it. And the way people have read that is that it's the corpse of someone who is pregnant. So like the idea is like that's the humanity of the mother and the unborn child together. So like you're actually born with this dark soul, in you. That's sort of what makes you human. And then if you start removing that, you become the hollow, which is like your natural state.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And it fulfills Miyazaki's dead baby quota,
It
which wasn't
certainly
met
does. Yeah.
in Dark Souls 1.
I like to imagine he's just got this like list of like ways to get away with having dead babies. So it's like inhuman dead baby, invisible dead baby, implied dead baby, ghost of a baby that means it died at some point, giant monster baby,
Aw.
skeleton baby,
Aw.
zombie baby.
I can't wait until they bring back Armored Core.
Oh god, yeah.
Robot baby, dead robot baby. But another dead baby can get inside of it and drive it around.
Is that real?
Damn well better be.
Okay, thank you. Our divinator Arki asks, why did Gale need to travel far into the future to the ringed city if the dark soul is literally already within all the humans? Could he just be eating enough pedestrians and achieve the same result?
It's a good question.
I think going to the pygmy kings is kind of like going to the source, but
Yeah.
but Gale figures out while he's there, like, it doesn't work. It's, which fits the theme of like, it never works. The chaos flame doesn't work. Linking the flame doesn't, it never works. Nothing will work. It has to end. This is the end. Dot period. It has to stop. So he goes there and he's like, dark soul, dark soul. And you know, the only time we see, like, in Bloodborne, when you use the executioner's gloves,
Yeah.
there's that same texture. Gale has it, and the Gru shamans in Dark Souls 3 have it, and it's basically like, this blood is dry. There's nothing left. This is it's you know.
Yeah.
And so Gale is like eating bones, and he's hoping it does anything. He's basically turning himself into just a vessel to hold. But he does create whatever enough darkness for you to take some blood back to his friend, and she can make the painting. But I don't think he had to. He didn't need to do it. It was never going to work. Nothing was ever going to work. It's Dark Souls. It has to. Nothing works. It turns out it just sucks.
The other way you could look at it is like when they talk about characters sort of splitting their souls, that maybe like humans have like these portions of the dark soul, but then like the original dark soul is much stronger, and that's what the pygmies had. And it sort of thins out across. So maybe he did have to go there to get to the source, like you were saying, that it would have been stronger at the source.
Mm-hmm.
I guess kind of like Bloodborne does with the blood, where like the blood of Queen Yharnam is stronger than the blood of Queen Annalise, which is stronger than the blood of Ariana, but they're all sort of like different generations of the same family.
Yeah, in that situation, the blood gets more diluted.
Yeah.
With Dark Souls, it's I don't know that it's diluted. It's just that like you just keep lighting this. You live in a world made of fire, and you're trying to keep it on fire. What's already burning, you're just running out of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this blood is not potent anymore. It doesn't have there's nothing left. It's just, poof. It's a cool looking spell for Gale to cast, and it looks great, and it's cinematic and everything. But like it's very Dark Soulsian, and it's, look how beautiful this dead thing is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So Richie,
yeah,
could you read Princess Grzester question?
Like, this question is apparently from Jerry Seinfeld. What's up with filing shrine? Did you ever notice that?
Did you ever notice?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What's up with DS3 Failing Shrine? The one we start the game in, the sky is normal and stays that way throughout the game. But then there are Untended Graves, which seems to be what the world will look like in the Age of Dark. It would make sense if Cemetery of Ash was a past version of Untended Graves, but Gundyr proves otherwise. Champion Gundyr, who appears in the Untended Graves, is an earlier version of Udex Gundyr we face in Cemetery of Ash. Also, if we never talk to the handmaid in the Cemetery of Ash, but we talk to the one in Untended Graves, next time we talk to her, she says she remembers us. But that would mean someone did link the flame in the Lothric Age, as the clearly future version of Filing Shrine isn't covered in darkness. Does that mean we're coming from the future to the past to link the flame? Also, is there a time skip during the cutscene that plays when we get out the Cinders of Lords? Presumably that means when we go forward in time to the Drake Heapy place. It seems the conversion of the Lords advanced quite a bit in the meantime. Like, there's another half to the question, but I guess we'll talk about Untended Graves first.
So the idea that that Untended Graves is like some alternate reality or that some time travel shenanigans are taking place. Like I have heard like a lot of people talk about it. And the only thing that makes sense to me is it's the same place. You're visiting it.
Yeah.
In a world where time doesn't mean anything. You're visiting the same place, but we always say, "Oh, the fire fades, Age of Dark," right? But there is no Age of Dark without fire, right? There's no darkness if there's no fire. That was like the whole thing of Dark Souls 2. It's like they're not the opposite of each other. They only exist because of each other. So if the fire is fading, then so too is the dark fading. And like the Shrine Maiden tells you, she's like, the bell's not ringing, nothing, like you're in a world where like everything seems chill. There's nothing wrong. The bell hasn't rang yet. But so like the only thing I've ever thought made any sense at all, and like we all know, like it was supposed to be cut content. It was supposed to be Pontiff Sullivan, yada yada. Okay,
yeah.
So to me, it's just here is what it looks like from the other side. Like your sun's on fire and there's a big eclipse and that's terrifying and scary. Well, here's what it is on the other side. It's just creeping into absolute nothingness. It's like nothingness isn't darkness. It's even the absence of that, and like that's where that's headed. That was the only thing. And I'm not even satisfied with that, but that's like the only thing my mind would.
Yeah. The other like things that can affect like the outside world, things that affect the graves, is that like the Swordmaster defeating the Swordmaster will make him spawn in Untended Graves. Yol dying makes him spawn in Untended Graves. So like those two things, that suggests like it can't be the past, because those are things you're doing in the present that are affecting the state of Untended Graves. So, like, Untended Graves either has to be the future or it just has to be, like, a parallel, like, reality that you step into. The other is Crimehild, who's a character in Lothric. She will invade you in Untended Graves. Right, so yeah.
Right. She's Lothric has the pillars, and she's the scholar pillar, right?
Yeah, the scholar. Yeah, so like from that you can establish, okay, this is somewhere that like it's you can go here from regular Lothric. This isn't backwards and forwards in time, and it almost seems like it's like parallel, kind of like we were talking about with the two different the two different ringed cities, like that, like they both seem to exist at the same time.
Right. When you destroy the egg, you can go back, and it's okay.
Yeah, you can go back. So I think it's the same kind of deal. Like, I think the idea behind Untended Graves as it is now is that this is what happens when Lothric doesn't link the fire. And that's somehow being held, like, it's like stuck in a side like pocket dimension or something. But then like, oh god, the weirdest part is Ludleth, because Ludleth talks about like he's the one who linked the fire in Lothric like the last time, and he talks in this way that's like, I'm holding it together, so it's almost like Untended Graves is kind of the reality, and Ludleth is holding it back through like force of will because he burned himself up.
I wonder if there's any so if you go to your grave in the Untended Graves, you're surrounded by Corvians, and the Corvians they're like attracted to like sad stories essentially. So you have the Queen of Lothric has given your corpse a ring. You're surrounded by the Corvians, but you're very much dead. So that if
or even if you say it's a parallel universe, maybe this is just what happens if you don't get raised.
Right.
So like you just in your coffin forever. And then that's why the world goes dark, because there's no one to bring the lords back. Yeah. The weird thing is also they talk about like the Queen of Lothric, I think, as if she left through the Untended Graves. There's like some item that implies that. Oh yeah, because she leaves the ring. So there was this theory that like, did the Queen like leave Lothric by like however you do it, like going into the Untended Graves? Yeah.
There's also a hidden in. It's not there in the Cemetery of Ash, but it's there in Untended Graves. I think in the Cemetery of Ash it's just a Titanite shard, but if you go through there in Untended Graves, it's a hidden, not a divine blessing, a hidden blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So the last question is by Big Easy, and Big Easy is actually the person who encouraged us to invite Saint to this podcast. So Big Easy is the reason this is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Big Easy.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah. And their question is, did Timbo ever try Embers again?
Timbo was on a collision course with doing Embers the moment he came into being.
I guess that's it for today. There were some audio issues, so this is what's left of it. Yeah, thanks for losing the audio, Richie.
Now, I think because you've said that before, you should clarify that it wasn't my fault this time. It was, in fact, the fault of the trees.
Yes.
The forest has turned against you. The nature itself was trying to prevent you from recording this.
I've never been on a podcast before that God wanted to stop.
The land itself is angered by the Snack Covenant.
Oh my god. Thank you. So, Saint, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/Saint Riot, and I will be streaming, I stream Souls games from Software Games, that includes Sekiro, on the weekends. And during the week, I just play typically old Final Fantasy games. On YouTube at Saint_Riot. And those videos are usually things I make in like weird bouts of mania. If that's, if you want to hear somebody screaming like a lunatic, I got you covered. Or you can read my nonsensical tweets at _Saint_Riot_.
Thank you very much, Saint.
Again, thank you guys.
Oh. Now, while we were recording this, my muse did pay me a visit. And the way we'll end this podcast. What, Richie?
Continue.
The way we'll end this podcast after like the ending music. Go! Okay, Richie, you have a lot to talk about. Please tell us.
No, I was saying, you're too far from a store to get Japanese slipper ingredients, so I'm not that on edge. But if you'd said my muse visited me and you were in Montreal, I would be extremely concerned.
Okay, thank you. And so after the outro music ends, what we're gonna have is like a reading of an excerpt from Loki's Twitter about Guinevere, which is something I sent to Saint Riot earlier today and I thought we'd have time to discuss, but we don't. So this could be maybe a little preview for like the next time Saint Riot is on.
Thank you for listening to both parts of that. Here is to finish off. It's an excerpt of something read by Loki, which is covering something that we wanted to discuss with Saint but didn't have time to. And we both hope you have a happy 2020.
Happy 2020!
In my analysis of Irithyll, I noted Guinevere's rather prominent presence in the Boreal Valley, but the goddess is noticeably absent from the record for the biggest events in the Vale's history, namely the rise and subsequent tyranny of Pontiff Sulivan. Why is she nowhere to be found during these critical years when she was such a public figure in the country's past? Where had she gone to avoid the fate of her kin? The answer is quite simple, because by that point she had already become the Queen of Lothric. Foremost among the evidence are the divine blessings and their hidden blessing counterparts. These are Guinevere's holy waters in past games, down to the exact same vials with ornate nature imagery. They even use the same name, which is more accurately translated as blessings of the goddess to signify their owner's divinity specifically. Yet now these holy waters are given out by a queen who just so happens to also be considered a goddess of good harvest and grace, just like Guinevere. And how convenient for this queen to have the same power to bless water with healing properties and recreate the exact same vessel that the goddess contains hers in. It's almost as if they're the same person. The second piece of evidence lies with Gertrude. The Queen of Lothric's daughter served her as a holy woman, with the unique miracle Bountiful Light. This spell's name, in effect, is obviously derived from the bountiful sunlight of Guinevere, only weaker in power. How convenient that the queen's child inherited a lesser version of the goddess's miracle. It's almost as if they were mother and daughter. Moreover, notice the striking similarity of the queen being attended to by human holy women, the same as Guinevere during her time in Anor Londo. It may not even have been the first time that role went to a daughter. Both Rosaria and the Dancer's souls can create one of the two miracles of Guinevere that were previously taught to her holy woman, so they could be used to protect warriors on the battlefront. Thus, these two may not only be Guinevere's daughters, but her former holy women as well. Next is the statement of Guinevere birthing many children. Rosaria and the Dancer are the only children we can infer she had with Flann after fleeing Anor Londo, with the only other child predating them being Shira. This is most certainly not many, but if the goddess bore any others, we do not meet them, or at least have no evidence to suggest we have. However, this assumes that she isn't the Queen of Lothric. The queen is known to have sired 4 children with Oseros, bringing Guinevere's potential progeny up to 7, and well within reason to call many. Indeed, their mother being a medial might account for why Lorien, Lothric, and Ocelot are portrayed so much larger than the average human, rather than it being artistic license for bosses. And when it came to her final child, the queen's disappearance at the onset of her white dragon husband's madness is so eerily reminiscent of Guinevere that one cannot blame the royal for fleeing from that horror show a second time. And with the queen's departure comes the final nail in the coffin. During Lothric's final days, the men had forgotten the Princess of Sunlight's caress and bounty. This reference to Guinevere's 2 miracles is obvious, but doubly so in the original script. The terms used in the Japanese description of projected heal are Iyashi and Megumi. These are normally translated respectively as comfort or soothing and blessing or grace, and are the exact same terms used in the Japanese names for soothing and bountiful sunlight, referencing the comfort and grace of the sun's light. In other words, the description is a wordplay on the men losing these aspects of her both physically and miracle-wise. This prompted them to spin a crude yet earnest story of the goddess that became this miracle, which functions as another slightly different and less powerful version of Guinevere's spells. Already this confirms that the goddess was present in Lothric during the last period it was a functional state, but the connection between her and the queen runs much deeper. When using their memory of Guinevere to capture maybe a fragment of the goddess's power, these men of Lothric specifically picture her retreating figure. This implies that the reason for them losing the goddess was that she simply walked away from them all, hence why they needed to write down a tale to retain some memory of her. How convenient that these events occurred during the same period that the Queen of Lothric had suddenly vanished, presumably having left in a similar manner after the trauma she endured. This gives little reason to doubt the Queen was the genuine article, rather than some relative or pretender. And because the game makes a point for us to never encounter major characters from past games alive, the fact that Lothric's Queen is out of the picture by the time we arrive to the scene is perfectly fitting for a goddess fans have been familiar with since Dark Souls 1. There's also a case to be made for Rosaria being Guinevere. The mother of her birth is, of course, treated with the same status as the goddess and births many children with Aldrich. Leonhard is also quick to take her soul to Irithyll, specifically the Anor Londo Cathedral's inner sanctum where we encounter the illusion of Guinevere in Dark Souls 1. This last example is an obvious attempt to associate her with the goddess through visual cues, and her name follows the same pattern. Rosaria derives from the Latin rosarium, meaning rosary, fitting her covenant's use of a rosary for membership and associating her with the Virgin Mary, the Holy Mother of Christianity who's prayed to with a rosary in Roman Catholicism. Guinevere was dubbed Imperial Mother Maria in the game files of Dark Souls 1, confirming that both characters are intended to draw upon the same holy and maternal elements as this Christian figure. Finally, the miracle of Guinevere derived from Rosaria's soul doesn't mention her holy woman. Thus, it is argued that she is more likely to be the goddess herself rather than her child, like the dancer. We are clearly supposed to associate Rosaria with Guinevere, but this evidence doesn't make as strong a case for her being Guinevere. The description for the aforementioned miracle also notes that Guinevere was a mother and wife, which can be just as easily taken as a hint to Rosaria being her child as much as the woman in question. It is far more likely that this information about Guinevere, mostly recycled text from Dark Souls 1, was simply split between the Sunlight miracles and isn't indicative of anything about the characters they're each derived from. We can infer that Rosaria and the dancer must have some relation to the goddess in order for their souls to create these miracles, but anything else is circumstantial. This is why the spells only possibly indicate that the two served as her holy woman, and the evidence supplementing these circumstances just doesn't pan out. Rosaria never once shares or inspires one of Guinevere's miracles or holy items during her entire tenure at the Cathedral of the Deep. And Leonhard has little reason to take her soul to the site of her illusion at the cathedral rather than her room in the royal manor or some place more intimately connected with the goddess, specifically. If anything, he may have ultimately come to the cathedral to confront Aldrich for ravaging Rosaria, given it is the abuse she suffered at the God-Eater's hand that consumes his addled mind. Even with his dying breath, he only ever calls his goddess Rosaria. If the mother of her birth is Guinevere, Leonhard doesn't seem to bring her there with that in mind. It's also impossible to compromise that both Rosaria and the Queen of Lothric are Guinevere, as Rosaria had been a prisoner of the Cathedral of the Deep long before the Queen of Lothric left her country. Guinevere being exclusively Lothric's queen just makes the most sense in every aspect. And so, I am confident concluding that Guinevere is the Queen of Lothric, while Rosaria is her and Flan's daughter. After becoming a prominent figure in Irithyll, the princess was eventually married off to Osseros, likely as part of a political marriage decided between Gwyndolin and the King of Lothric. She then left her and Flan's children behind in the Boreal Valley to perform her royal duties, and was thus absent during Sullivan's subsequent coup. As Queen of Lothric, Guinevere could only accept the pontiff's public testimony and respect her husband's close collaboration with the man. We can't even infer that she knew the current status of her children. Without their mother, the sisters were forced to submit to the pontiff, one becoming the dancer, while Rosaria was eventually sent off to be Aldrich's plaything. Indeed, the decision to exile the dancer as an outrider knight in apparent command of the others may well have been a conscious choice on our crafty pope's part. With Lothric in chaos, sending the daughter of the Queen of Lothric would be a shrewd political move to more easily reach out and re-establish diplomacy. If the country's royalty were still in charge of the state and faithful to the gods, then sending in Irithel's troops under the command of their relative would be more easily accepted. At worst, she could help smooth over Irithel's unwelcomed invasion. And if her relation to Guinevere proved irrelevant, then there were other benefits from having a descendant of the royalty there. As to where Guinevere went after leaving Lothric behind, who really knows? There's no evidence of her fleeing with anyone else, and she certainly didn't return to Irithyll. The goddess may have gone far away from Lothric, hoping once again to escape her royal duties and wash her hands of all the turmoil and heartache she's been forced to endure alone, this time for good. If you found this explanation interesting, please consider reading my analyses of Irithyll, Sullivan, Aldrich, and the Deep on my Twitter, which can be found at Loki_DS. That's Loki, LOKEY_DS.